Madam Clerk, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Vega.
Here.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Present.
Councilmember Mosby.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Janelle Osborne.
Here.
Mayor Bob Lingle.
Here. Let's see, Mr. City Attorney, we're returning from closed session. Do we need to report out at all, or?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council met in closed session to discuss the one item on the closed session agenda, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The council discussed the one matter, but no reportable action was taken.
Okay, thank you. And if I could get everyone to rise, remove your hats, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you have not already done so, if I can remind everyone to silence their cell phones or other electronic devices. Okay, we're going to start with item number 1. It's introduction of ordinance number 166118, amending Lompoc Municipal Code subdivisions 9.36.12b to permit commercial cannabis testing in industrial districts. Yes, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a very simple item requested by the council at the last regular meeting to bring back today, which is to allow cannabis testing uses in the city's industrial zone district. So that is what this ordinance does. If this ordinance were to be adopted, then cannabis testing uses would be allowed in the business park, commercial office, planned commercial development, and now industrial districts. That concludes the staff report, and I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Okay. Oh, Mr. Mosby.
Now, this is real similar with a zoning code update coming. Is this the same recommendation that the Planning Commission is making?
That's correct. As part of our zoning code update meetings at the Planning Commission, they independently decided to recommend to you all to add testing to the industrial zone. So that hasn't come to you yet, but they did recommend that.
So we're just kind of doing this a little early, is kind of through the
Yes.
recommendation.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll open this up to the public. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. Discussion, recommendations? Councilmember Starbuck.
I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded in discussion. Okay. The only discussion I'll say is everyone knows my feeling on this. I don't think we need any more, but we did approve the ordinance, and as it was pointed out to me, there is other testing in industrial zones, so I think it'd be short-sighted of me to vote against this, so I will be voting in favor of it. Any other comments? Let's vote. That passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, next item. Item number 2, discussion of possible action to authorize the city manager to provide letters of authorization to commercial cannabis use license applicants. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is the main event for tonight. This is an item requested by council at the last meeting again regarding cannabis local authorization letters. As I explained a little bit at the last meeting, due to the state's delay in processing and issuing state licenses for cannabis uses, the state implemented a program where they will issue temporary licenses for cannabis uses. And this is the way that cannabis is set up in the state of California is the cannabis use must first obtain a local authorization or local approval, and then apply to the state to obtain a state license, and then only then, at that time when they have both licenses, they can open up for operation. As I mentioned, since the state was taking so long with regular state licenses, they have decided to issue temporary state licenses, but the state law says that they will only issue those licenses until January 1st of 2019. Some of the state licensing agencies have stated that in order to issue a temporary state license by January 1st of 2019, they will need to have an application filed into them by the cannabis use by December 1st of 2018. So that is why we have this special meeting tonight, because if the council were to decide to have the city proceed with temporary authorization letters, we would need to get those out to the applicants for cannabis uses in Lompoc in time for them to apply to the state by December 1st, which is later this week. So the temporary or the local authorization letter that we're talking about is essentially it's a letter that we send to cannabis applicants that says, even though we at the city level have not fully processed your cannabis application at this time and issued you a license, we're giving you this letter to authorize you to go to the state and apply for a temporary license from the state. It contains caveats and disclaimers that state simply because they receive this local authorization letter from the city, they are not allowed to operate in the city until they receive their state license and receive their local license. And it also contains an additional method to prevent marijuana or cannabis uses from opening without having received their local license. And that is an agreement that we're proposing to require all of the cannabis applicants to sign, which will state that if they do open for operation in Lompoc without obtaining a local license first and all other planning and building permits that are required, then they will be required to pay $25,000 per day of operation to the city of Lompoc as liquidated damages for operating an unapproved use. There are other cities that have taken this path in order to allow their applicants to go to the state to apply for temporary licenses, such as the city of Long Beach and the city of Los Angeles. Attached to the staff report is a copy of a letter that was issued by the city of Long Beach, and our letter takes much the same form. According to documentation that staff has acquired from the city of Los Angeles, the state licensing agencies have agreed to accept these local authorization letters and process them. But I want to make very clear to the council and to all the applicants that there is no guarantee that when they apply with a local authorization letter from Lompoc, that the state will accept it. But it is something that we can do to help facilitate their application. If the council wants to go down this path tonight and issue these letters, they do need to make a decision about which of our currently pending applications should receive an authorization letter from staff. We have, as another one of your attachments, is a list of all the applications that have been filed in Lompoc. Since we started accepting applications, there have been 26. 4 of them were filed just this month in November. So I proposed a couple of ways in the staff report that the council could use to decide who will get an authorization letter and who won't. You could decide that all the applications that have reached a certain level, we have 3 levels of processing here on this tracking chart. You could decide that applications that have reached a certain level will receive the authorization letters. You could decide that applications that were filed before a certain date would receive authorization letters, or you could decide that all pending applications can receive authorization letters, including the ones all the way up until the last one that was filed. I don't think I have anything else to add, but I am available for questions. I guess one more thing is that if this were to be approved, the process that we would follow over the next few days is that we would send out the agreement to be signed to each of the applicants. They would sign it and return it to the city clerk. And then when the city clerk receives the signed agreement, she'll have the city manager sign it. And then it'll be an executed agreement. And then the city clerk will send out the authorization letter to the applicant, all hopefully before Wednesday or Thursday, so that they can file their applications with the state prior to December 1st. So it will be a task, but we will do our best. So I am available now for any questions.
Questions for the city attorney? Councilmember Vega.
Jeff, what is the negative, or is there any positives to just approving all pending applications? It's just a little bit more work, a few more letters. The benefit may be less than for some of the people that were just in the preliminary stages, or is there any benefit or any negative? Again, I'm asking for the state application.
Well, I think that an argument of fairness could be made by some of the applicants that applied long ago, that have been, going through the process for many months. They may say that it's unfair for someone who applied just a couple of days ago to receive an authorization letter. The other thing about issuing authorization letters to applicants that filed their applications even up until maybe yesterday, I don't know if there are any, is that staff may not have had time to check to see whether they fall into one of the prohibited areas within the radius buffers around sensitive uses. So it would be maybe inappropriate to issue an authorization letter to those applicants when we don't even know if they're applying for a correct location. And like I said, I don't know if there are any like that.
Got you. Is there any point there where a phase two, since there's 4 phases here, where a phase 2 would already be approved as far as their location? I'm not sure if you're familiar with staff's approval process as far as what you just mentioned.
We have our consultant here who processes the applications, who might be able, or who will be able to answer that better than I can. So I'll have him step up and kind of explain what happens at each phase.
It's Chris Coulter with SCI Consulting. The answer to that question is the first initial phase, there's a zoning verification that's processed by the city. So they look at the property, and they look at the cannabis activity and make sure that it is in the correct particular zone for the city. And there is an additional zoning re-verification step in the city departmental review later on in the process. However, that first phase, incoming applications are reviewed for their zoning qualifications.
So if I could ask one more question here of you while you're up there. If you get to a stage or a phase 2, has that zoning and area been already solidified that they're in their approved area and they can move forward?
Yes, when those applications are forwarded to me at level 2, they have been analyzed for their zoning based on the cannabis use that has been proposed.
So level 2 would be where we're able to actually move forward to the next step.
Correct.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Councilmember Mosby.
And notice on the chart, in one case, we went from submitted date to received at level 2, there was a negative 2 days. And then likewise, when we had a return to applicant, number 6, return to applicant, 10th of August, completed items from the applicant, 8th of August. We had a 2-day. I was trying to see where the hump was, and it seems like when you went from submitted date to received it at level 2, it's averaging about 10 days to get to that point. And then it can go anywhere from 40 to 100 days to return to applicant. And then the next time is, another 10 or 15 days. and then it's 2 or 3 days to 3. So it seems like there are some common natural, so to say, progression of this project, where it seems like you meet this point, you got another mountain that goes over. So it seems like there is a dividing line. But received at 2 means that you've gone through everything in the zoning, meaning the zoning component and the radius maps?
Chris Coulter, SCI. Yes, so when it comes to me,
And that's received at level 2, correct? On this, have you seen the fancy chart?
so when it's received at level 2, these have been analyzed by the city for zoning verification has been performed. And then all of the stuff that happens at level 2 actually, that doesn't have anything to do with zoning because that's already been done at level 1.
How about the sensitive receptor map? Has that gone through that compliance when it's number 2?
Yes.
So it's done both the zoning and the sensitive receptor compliance.
Yeah, I believe that that's correct.
And when was this updated last?
This would have been updated last week. Yeah, the 20th. Correct, thanks.
And do we know if the last 4 on here have made it to level 2?
No, these have not made it to my desk yet.
Does the city know if they're ready to go? Or if...
I'm being informed by the city clerk thank you, that for those last 4, that planning has looked at them. I just don't know what planning has determined, and I don't know if our planner here is aware. Come up to the microphone.
We are still reviewing them,
Do you know how much further you are away?
probably this week.
Because I'm looking, it varies from 1 day to 20 days.
I'm thinking this week we'll be able to make a determination.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone? Councilmember Vega.
Jeff, how many applications are in phase 1? We probably should ask the planner when he was up here as far as who are in phase 1 of this, okay? Obviously, it sounds like we're within a week's time frame for which to move forward to phase 2. And hopefully in public comment, everybody out here, if you feel like there's a level of unfairness, if we approve all applicants, or if there's going to be someone that's going to feel that it's okay. I'd like to hear if somebody comes up when we do have public comment, it'd be nice to hear from the public to see if there's any feedback, if somebody going to get mad because someone just applied and they get this. And then also the positive part of moving forward, say someone gets one of these letters and they've just applied, what is the benefit to them also, okay? Obviously, they can't move forward with the process until we're fully approved here, but it gives them a benefit of a little bit of a buffer, so to speak.
For someone that's just applied, so one of these 4 applicants that applied in November, if they received an authorization letter from the city, they would be able to go to their state and get the temporary state license, or at least apply for it, in only a few weeks or months, which means if they receive their license from the city subsequent to that, it'd be in, optimistically, very early 2019, they would be able to start operations in Lompoc in early to mid 2019. Whereas if they did not receive an authorization letter from the city, they couldn't get a state temporary license because they wouldn't be able to apply by December 1st. That means they would have to apply for a regular state license, which the state is taking, between 6 and 9 months to process and to issue, which means they wouldn't get to start operating until probably sometime in 2020.
So again, within their buffer zones and being in compliance with the city process, they wouldn't bypass that process.
No, they would still need to comply with all city rules, all city laws, and receive a city local license before they open up. If we gave them an authorization letter and they happen to not be in the right zone, or they happen to be in a prohibited area, we would never issue them a local
Gotcha.
license until they change their location.
So there's no way of leapfrogging in through the process. It's still there and it's solid.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll open this up to the public.
Hello. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Christine Bates. I'm a registered nurse. I'm also corporate secretary and community liaison for SoCal's Choice Incorporated, who is one of the 20 applicants still waiting for city council approval. I do appreciate you guys holding this special emergency meeting for us tonight. And I understand that these letters of authorizations are very important to a lot of us. As a business owner or potential business owner here in the city of Lompoc, I have no objection to you guys issuing the letters of authorization to all current applicants. We look forward to opening our retail cannabis store at the old Blacksmith's restaurant and helping to revitalize the old town. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is John DeFriel. I have applications 5 and 6 in the pipeline. We're hoping to get our final approval any day now. I'd like to mirror the comments made by the woman before me. I have no qualms as an operator with other people being issued a temporary license. Another thing to consider there is that should you determine someone does not meet your criteria or is not in the proper zoning, you can notify the state of that, and even if they have a temporary license, you can have it pulled from the state. You have to maintain compliance at all times with your locals, so if anytime you decide to pull someone's license, you always have that power. You're not giving that up. Otherwise, yeah, thank you very much for holding the special meeting, and I look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Erin Weber. I'm with Axiom Advisors. We're representing several folks here who are currently undergoing your permitting process. So that permitting process, as the staff spoke to, involves 3 different phases. Phase 1, which is the zoning verification. Phase 2, which is the more detailed review by SCI, the cannabis consultant. And then, of course, Phase 3, which is the robust kind of multi-departmental review. So, of course, we're here today because the state has announced that they will no longer be issuing temporary licenses in 2019. So the industry has a short window. If they'd like to apply for a temporary license, they're going to need to do that within the next month. So why is this important? Temporary licenses can be processed much more quickly than annual licenses. In some cases, annual licenses can take up to 9 months to process. And so if applicants cannot secure a temporary license in 2019, the consequence is that you may have significant delays until later of 2019. Delays in permitting are really problematic for folks who are really trying to be compliant. So the first thing is it results in a lot more costs for local businesses. It's going to slow the industry's pathway to compliance and goals to operate in the legal market. It's also going to delay revenues coming into the city. And lastly, it's going to encourage the continuation of the black market. So local authorization is required to apply for temporary license. We must have that letter from the city of Lompoc to be able to go ahead and apply with the state. This isn't unprecedented. Other jurisdictions are doing this. 2 examples are Culver City and the city of Long Beach. It's also important to note that issuing this letter is not a permanent entitlement. You have the authority as the city of Lompoc to contact the state at any time and revoke if there's a bad actor. So all cannabis applicants have to maintain good standing with both the state annually. We have to renew those applications annually. And of course, stay in good standing with the city of Lompoc. So in conclusion, we would recommend that you authorize the city manager to issue applicants this local authorization letter that's needed. One suggestion that we have would be that as long as folks have applied as of this date, they're eligible. The reason why is I do represent some folks that applied early on, but I also represent a local operator who has applied more recently. They have put a lot of work into their application. It's a complete application. Their goal is to continue to go through this process, but they really would like the opportunity to go ahead and apply for a temporary state license. So again, would recommend that as long as folks have applied before today, November 26th, they could be eligible. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and members of the public. My name is Joe A. Garcia. I am co-founder of the Lompoc Valley Cannabis Association. I'd like to thank the council for addressing this issue today. As you can see, there are several people here that are concerned with what is happening within the cannabis industry, especially with the deadline set by the BCC of December 1st for receiving local temporary state applications licenses. With the ultimate date of December 31st. One thing that I would like to note for the council to take note on is that what is being proposed here today would not advance any business any further to opening their doors or being anywhere along the line of being closer to operating a business. What this does is simply allow for these businesses which are currently in the process of acquiring a local permit to begin the state application process and meet the deadline for set by the BCC. It will not allow these businesses to open their doors. It will not allow them to operate. It is not local approval, as the city attorney has mentioned previously when he spoke. All this does is allow for companies to meet the deadline set by the BCC and other cannabis authorities to apply for apply for the state temporary license. What this will do, because as some of the previous speakers and my colleagues have spoken about, you cannot apply for a state license, whether that be an annual license or a temporary one, without local approval. Simply what we're doing here today is asking that the city in good faith issue this letter to these companies which are in the process of applying for the license. Mr. Vega, you asked specifically about whether if someone just came and applied should be able to move this forward. Again, this does not apply to a business being advanced any further in the process. It doesn't move them up or down in the scale. They would still have to go through all of the checks and balances that have been set up by the city for each level of review that is set. All this will allow them to do is to meet the deadline and get on the database for the state so that when they do apply for their annual license, they're already there. It's a quicker process and it will allow them to move. What should be noted is that most of these companies which will be applying for this temporary state permit, which only will be good for about 120 days, most of these companies probably will not be even able to open their doors within those 120 days and use that permit. So that's something that should be noted. But it is going to get them in the database, it is going to get them further along, and it is going to allow them to network and be a part of the process. We don't want to slow this down any further. The number one question I'm asked is, when is the first shop going to open in Lompoc? Thank you.
Next, please.
Good evening, Mayor Lingle, council members. My name is Rob Traylor. I'm a Lompoc resident. Number one, thank you for taking the opportunity to have this meeting. I think it's incredibly important to this budding industry. Thanks. I wanted to make a comment on when, in terms of determining the threshold for applicants and when letters of authorization should be issued. I think it's somewhat of a red herring because at the end of the day, the people that are in level 3, if a sensitive use arises before they're issued a permit, then they can't get a license. So I think the threshold should be who has paid their money. If they've come to the table with $13,000 and an application to submit, then there's no additional risk on the city, considering all of the caveats and disclaimers. And I know no one else has commented on this, and I certainly don't want good enough or perfection to stand in the way of good enough. But I would suggest that the liquidated damages clause is entirely unenforceable, because $25,000 certainly bears no reasonable relation to the damage that the non-breaching party would sustain. So again, I don't know if I would want to scrap the whole thing because of that. I certainly don't think anybody should be operating without all required licenses to begin with, but I would suggest that was unenforceable. So thanks.
Thank you. Next, please. Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Vega.
You know, I recommend that we move this forward with all pending applications, not subjective to dates or anything. I think that from public comment and all other comments, the people that have gone forward and put in money are actually investing in the process, and I need to look at them as potential business owners. And for us to paint ourselves as business friendly, we need to move forward in a professional manner. So I'd like to make the motion that we accept and allow that all pending applications to move forward for this application process, for this letter.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. So I have a question on that. So you said all pending applications. If someone applies tomorrow, they would not be included in your motion.
You know, that's subjective. That may be something we want to discuss. I don't know that if somebody comes in tomorrow, if it's unfair or not, if we should draw a line in the sand. So
Your motion is all
you.
pending applications.
I got
I
you.
assume that was pending as of today.
Right now, I'm going to go with pending applications as of today. I think because of the deadline, the timeframes, I think we do need to draw a line in the sand, but I was just trying to answer your question.
Yeah, that's good.
It's
Okay,
subjective,
yeah.
you know, it's very subjective. So how do you answer for all of it? I think being fair is all the people that have basically paid their money right now.
And is that okay with the second?
Yes.
Okay, so all pending applications as of today. Someone comes in tomorrow, they go through, will not get the letter from the city.
I believe we have to draw a line in the sand somewhere
Good,
because
okay.
of timeframes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, for the record, I want to note that this motion does include authorizing the city manager to send these letters, as well as approving both of the draft agreement and the draft letter. Is that correct, Victor?
Yes, yes, and I'd like to actually include, based on public comment, that the city does have the authority and they can move forward with notifying the state if somebody doesn't meet that criteria in order to keep them people from moving or applicants from moving forward. I'm sure that's probably going to be noted in your agreement.
That is understood, but we will do that, Councilmember Vega.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilman Vega?
No.
Okay. Okay, let's vote. It passes 5-0. Okay, that concludes our meeting. We will adjourn this meeting to a regular city council meeting, 6:30 p.m. This says December 18th. I don't believe that's correct. What's
December 4th.
that? December 4th, okay. Okay, so thank you. Good evening.